Hello, I just listened to Oncle Jazz' new album from the Montreal-based band Men I Trust. I first heard the band from a YouTube recommended video for their single Show Me How earlier this year, and since then I've gone back through their entire discography. High school friends Jesse Karen and Dragos Chiriak founded the band in 2014, and since then they released a self-titled album as well as Headroom in 2015. These songs vary from jazz, electronic, funk, pop, a combination of some of them, and they also incorporate guest lead vocals from a number of different artists. These albums are definitely the band trying to find its sound, and they're a bit all over the place considering theme, mood, and quality, but there are some solid tracks in these albums. In 2016, Emma Pruill joined the band as their lead vocalist as well as a guitarist, and since then the band has continued to refine their sound, releasing 11 singles along with music videos that have gained an audience on YouTube. That's me. I'm one of those people. So what type of music is Men I Trust? What is on Oncle Jazz? Well, the band has a very distinct sound with a few consistent things that they usually incorporate into every song. I think a good genre, which doesn't get enough consideration, is lo-fi hip-hop beats you can study/relax to. This band is like that, except it's not really hip-hop, and the songs are actually interesting. I'm not hating on lo-fi hip-hop or anything. I'll listen to some chilled cow while studying. I think there's a time and place for those types of songs, but they aren't necessarily interesting songs to sit down and listen to. And that's why I want to specify that while this album has more lo-fi, relaxed, subtle sound, it has a lot more to offer from the listening experience than a lo-fi hip-hop beat. We have to talk about the bass. Jesse Karen's bass is front and center, bringing life to this album with the funk and the thickness. Is that why it's called Oncle Jazz? I don't know, is this the type of jazz your uncle listens to? This band highlights the bass, and often the bass line is mixed higher than, I guess, more conventional songs today. There's even some instances where they'll use the drawn-out guitar strums more to create atmosphere and to build up the song kind of like a bass line would, while the bass takes on the job of the main melody. I think one of the perks of starting a band is that you can make your instrument more important, but really the jazz and funk-inspired bass are one of the reasons why this album stands out. The band also knows how to make a chorus. To me, it still feels like there's this intangible, mystical roll of the dice whenever an artist makes a chorus. Even some of the best artists in the world seem to sometimes get a hit, and most of the time not. The band's score on Oncle Jazz is pretty ridiculous. It's something like 16 great choruses, 8 not-so-great choruses. This consistency is pretty crazy, especially considering their last 2 albums were a little bit all over the place. And it's important to note that Emma's voice is very unique. She has a really soft voice, and it's not necessarily even the focal point of the song. Often I feel like her voice is just what accompanies the instrumentals, not necessarily leads them. One thing to note is that she doesn't use much range in her voice. There are a few surprise songs on the albums where her inflection changes to match the songs, and in some songs she totally steals the show. But most of the time her voice isn't front and center, like a lot of, modern day songs. This is a choice by the band, sometimes mixing her vocals so that they just kind of blend into the music. Her voice works well with nearly every track, and I really couldn't imagine the choruses without her vocal contribution. None of the songs would be nearly as compelling. Some highlights on the track list start with the song Tail Whip. It's got an upbeat tempo, phasing synths, a funky bass line, and an amazing chorus. This is a must listen if you're interested in the band. It's a low-key song that is still somehow a banger. The song Numb is it's a sad song. It's got a great vocal performance, a whiny guitar and synth, and a bass line that is the broken heartbeat of this song. Plus the lyrics are pretty great on this song. There's the notable line, "Please forgive me if I ever did you wrong. I'll be your candle, burn me upside down." Damn. The album has its points where the lyrics are pretty good and also pretty damn silly. And sometimes the lyrics are either too poetic or encoded. It's too vague for me to really attach onto, or for me to at least enjoy. With that said, the lyrics aren't really front and center, and they rarely take away from the listening experience. The lovey-dovey song All Night is a great example of a new sound, a sexy, almost R&B sound that really works well with the album. Emma uses a different inflection for these vocals, but lyrically, this is cheesy as hell. Oh my god, the song Pierre at the back end of the album. Pierre is this absolute folk banger. It's crazy how the band can make so many different genres work well, and this is just another great example. Pierre is so cinematic, some like chanting drums, the great use of tambourines, the vocals are done really well with this cool effect on it, and to top it off, there's a flute solo, which when I first heard it, I went fucking crazy. It's one of my surprise favorites on the album, and I've been able to listen to it on repeat for like 2 hours. The real stinkies of the album come down to boring choruses and instrumentals, and just having too many songs on the track list. The 2 opening songs, Norton Commander and Days Go By, these are not how you want to start this album. They're like C-tier versions of what the band actually has to offer. They lean too much into the atmospheric, subtle, lo-fi sound, and you don't have any of the sounds that really set the band apart. The album also kind of teeters off with the last 6 tracks. Excluding the song Something in the Water, which I think brings some refreshing ideas, it just seems like after 20 songs already, the band is kind of running out of ideas. A good example is the song Porcelain, which has a weak chorus, and just sounds like a boring version of the track Found Me from earlier in the album. If I'm in this complaint parts of the video, then I gotta talk about the drums, which are a bit uninspired. I think it's fine to have simple drums, and I think they do work in a good portion of these tracks, but I don't know how much they add to the track. They're more so just doing their job of keeping the tempo. I'm a really big fan of drums that add a lot to a song, whether that be sectioning it up differently, or at least just providing different depth and sounds that you can listen to. But this album doesn't really provide that. Drums don't seem to be the focus of the band, but I think more complex drums would be a great complement to these songs. And probably the biggest thing holding this album back is just the fact that they have a really long track list. 24 songs is too much for this band. I hope in the future they won't have to wait 3 or 4 years to release another album. I think they'd benefit from annually releasing an album, or at least cutting down the track list to 10 or 15 songs max. Oncle Jazz really feels like they just threw the past 4 years onto one album. There's a solid album in here, it's just a bit oversaturated. Oncle Jazz, Men I Trust, I would definitely recommend this album. The vibe and the addicting choruses are all way too good to pass up. I'm giving this album a 6 out of 10, which is a little crazy considering I have like 10 tracks off of this album saved to my song library. But I'm giving this album this score because I know the band has more in the tank. This is the band's first album with a permanent singer, and it still feels like they're trying to learn exactly how to dial into their sound while also stretching the limits, keeping things interesting, and creating a polished product. They're going to build on this, and giving it a 6 out of 10 gives me more room to praise their future projects. Give the album a listen, let me know what you think, and thanks for watching.